Olivia, most of us are taught that being a good kid is the key to success. But what if the secret to surviving unimaginable horror, plane crashes, shark attacks, brutal torture, was actually being a juvenile delinquent first? Jackson. That is a wild thought. You're saying that to survive the absolute worst humanity can throw at you, it helps to have been a bit of a menace? That's the story we're unpacking today, and it is a journey. Olivia. It's the unbelievable premise at the heart of Unbroken, a World War II story of survival, resilience, and redemption by Laura Hillenbrand. Jackson and Hillenbrand is the perfect person to tell this story. It's incredible to think she wrote this masterpiece, which spent over 4 years on the bestseller list, while battling a debilitating chronic fatigue syndrome herself. She conducted hundreds of interviews from home. Olivia. Exactly. It's a story of endurance told by an author who embodies it, and it all starts with a boy who was, by all accounts, a complete and utter handful. The forge of resilience, from delinquent to Olympian. Olivia, before Louis Zamperini, was an Olympian or a war hero. He was, to put it mildly, a public menace in Torrance, California. We're talking about a kid who was a master lockpicker, stole anything that wasn't nailed down from neighbors and bakeries, and even rigged the local church bell to ring at odd hours, sending the whole town into a panic. Jackson. So he was a genuine troublemaker, not just a little mischievous, but a full-on one-boy insurgency, as the book calls it. Olivia, precisely. His childhood stories almost always ended with the same phrase, "And then I ran like mad." He was constantly running from the police, from angry bakers, from neighbors. He was defiant, resourceful, and he learned how to endure. His family, Italian immigrants, faced prejudice, and there was even the looming threat of the eugenics movement in California, which targeted unfit kids like him. Jackson, wait, so his troublemaking as a kid actually helped him? That seems completely backwards. Olivia, that's the fascinating part. His older brother, Pete, saw something no one else did. He saw that Louis's rebellion wasn't just malice, it was a desperate cry for recognition. Pete famously told the school principal, if Louis were recognized for doing something right, he'd turn his life around. Jackson, and he was right, wasn't he? Pete basically channeled all that running like mad energy into something productive. Olivia, he dragged Louis, kicking and screaming, onto the high school track team. At first, Louis hated it. He got beaten badly in his first race and wanted to quit. But Pete wouldn't let him. He coached him relentlessly. And then something clicked. Louis discovered the peace of running, the roar of the crowd, the feeling of his body doing what it was born to do. Jackson. So all that running from the cops and neighbors literally trained him to run for glory. That's a perfect narrative arc. Olivia. It is. And he wasn't just good, he was a phenomenon. They called him the Torrance Tornado. In 1934, he shattered the national high school mile record, running it in 4 minutes and 21 seconds, a record that stood for 20 years. This defiant, thieving kid from Torrance was suddenly on a path to the Olympics. Jackson. That transformation is staggering. From a kid on the verge of being sent to a reform school to an Olympic hopeful, it really shows the power of finding that one thing you're meant to do, Olivia, and it forged the very resilience he would need. That defiance, that refusal to be beaten, that ability to endure pain, it was all honed on the track. He was training for a race he couldn't possibly imagine. The crucible of suffering, survival at sea and in captivity. Olivia Dare. And that glory took him all the way to the 1936 Berlin Olympics, where he ran an incredible final lap in the 5,000 meters that even caught Adolf Hitler's attention. But his real race was yet to come. The war broke out, the 1940 Olympics were canceled, and Louis enlisted, becoming a bombardier on a B-24 Liberator. Jackson, the B-24, which the book points out was notoriously difficult to fly. The airmen had a nickname for it, right? The Flying Coffin. Olivia, that's the one. And in May 1943, on a search and rescue mission, his plane, the Green Hornet, suffered a catastrophic mechanical failure and plunged into the Pacific Ocean. I can't even imagine. 1 minute you're in the sky, the next you're in the middle of 64 million square miles of ocean. Olivia. Of the 11 men on board, only 3 survived the crash. Louis, the pilot, Russell Allen Phillips, or Phil, and a tail gunner named Francis McNamara, or Mac. They were adrift on 2 tiny life rafts with almost no food or water. Jackson. And this is where that childhood resilience gets tested in the most brutal way possible. Olivia, absolutely. The first crisis hits almost immediately. In a moment of panic on the first night, Mac eats the only food they have, all 6 squares of military-grade chocolate. Jackson, oh man, that's devastating. How do you even respond to that? He just doomed them. Olivia. Louis was furious, but he also understood it was panic. He had to become the leader. He rationed the few drops of water they had, figured out how to catch rainwater in a canvas case, and even caught an albatross that landed on his head. They couldn't stomach the meat, but he used it as bait to catch their first fish. He was inventing survival as he went. Jackson. And then there were the sharks. Olivia, constant. They were bumping the raft, trailing them, a perpetual circling threat. But the most soul-crushing moment came on their 27th day adrift. They see a plane. They fire their only flares. The plane circles back. They think they're saved. 0530 Jackson. But it's not a rescue plane. Olivia, it's a Japanese bomber. It opens fire. The men dive into the water, and now they're caught between bullets from above and sharks from below. Louis had to physically punch sharks in the nose to keep them away while the bomber strafed them again and again. Jackson. That is just one nightmare layered on top of another. How does a person not just give up? Olivia. It's almost impossible to comprehend. They survived the attack, but one raft was destroyed. They were left on a single, leaking raft with no food, no water, and their hope shattered. They drifted for another 20 days. After 47 days at sea, having traveled 2,000 miles, they were skeletal, sun-scorched, and barely alive when they were finally found. Jackson, found by the Japanese. Olivia, exactly. Their ordeal wasn't over. It was just entering a new, even more horrific phase. They were taken to a series of secret interrogation and POW camps where they were starved and brutalized. And it's here that Louis meets the man who would become the center of his nightmares for years to come, Corporal Mutsuhiro Watanabe. Jackson the Bird. What was it about him that made him so uniquely monstrous? It wasn't just beatings, right? The book makes it clear he was something else entirely. Olivia the Bird was a sadist in the truest sense. He was from a wealthy, privileged family and had been denied an officer's commission, a deep source of shame for him. He took out that rage on the prisoners, especially officers. He would swing from moments of charming generosity, offering a prisoner a cigarette, to explosions of horrific violence. It was the unpredictability that was so terrifying. He singled out Louis, the famous Olympian, for special torment. Jackson, can you give a specific example? Because the book is filled with them. Olivia. The most infamous is the beam incident. The Bird, furious with Louis for a minor infraction, forced him to lift a massive 6-foot-long wooden beam and hold it over his head. He told the other guards to bayonet Louis if he dropped it. Louis, emaciated and sick, stood there, holding this impossible weight. Minutes stretched on. He held it for 37 minutes. Jackson, 37 minutes? That's physically impossible. Olivia, the other prisoners watched in stunned silence. Louis later said he felt something beyond himself take over. When the Bird saw that Louis wasn't breaking, he ran at him in a rage and smashed him with the beam, knocking him unconscious. It wasn't about punishment. It was about shattering a man's dignity. And that was the Bird's